quite a number of amendments that we have our names to in this section, so I'll try and deal with them briefly enough, but they largely become under the headings of a requirement to consult with the woman, ascertain the views of the woman, dealing with other issues then in terms of serious harm and the issue of risk. So quite a broad berth, but I'll be as brief as I can. I think firstly that as the bill is presently structured, there's no requirement at all to consult with the pregnant woman, and I think that's really problematic, and it isn't really reflective of the rights-based approach to the provision of women's health care. And I think amendment number 16 and amendment number 15 in part seeks to do this. And amendment number 15 deals with the pregnant woman having a right to deem that the risk to her life or health is unacceptable. And I think we discussed these. I mean, pregnant women are competent adults. We removed the 8th Amendment to recognise bodily autonomy, so that's what we should be doing. And examples were given at the committee that a woman knows best, that maybe a doctor might feel, well look, there is a risk to your health here, but the woman may feel, well look, I'm in my early 40s, I haven't had any other children, I desperately want a child, so I want to take the risk and continue with this pregnancy, even though it may result in a risk to my health, and she makes that decision. Whereas maybe a younger woman with children at home and other responsibilities feel that that risk was a risk too great to take and may decide that that risk to her health was too much. So there was a lot of talk during the referendum about trusting women. I think that was very much a sentiment of the vote, and it's not reflected anywhere here. So this is an addition, if you like. It's not eliminating anything else, but it's allowing the voice of the woman to be put centre stage in terms of the legislation. Amendment 17 in this grouping is to do with the issue of the term serious harm. And again, we've discussed this quite a lot. I'm not going to labour it, but it's not helpful at all in the climate of where we've come from on this issue. It's not women-centred, and I think the points made repeatedly at the committee was about the challenges in fixing risk, that it's best considered in a clinical setting, not defined in legislation as serious or severe. You know, a lot of the medical practitioners made the point that, you know, risk and development of serious harm or risk can fluctuate, and in that context mothers slip through the net, and we can't really have that situation. That was 17. And then amendment number 19, also in this group, is again important and dealing with the issue of risk, and it's deleting the word avert and substituting it with reduce. Now, this would ensure access to abortion if it reduces the risk to the woman's health, even if it doesn't eliminate that risk. By the wording we have now, the intervention would have to eliminate the risk. And again, I think that's very dangerous to have that there, and we do need to change this language, because there will be scenarios where the pregnancy is a significant contributing factor to the risk to the health of life, but not the risk to the health or life, but not the sole determinant. And its termination may significantly mitigate, but not entirely avert the risk. And I think we have to be very careful, and we do need to amend this here now to support medical practitioners' clinical judgment. I think the word avert in the legal sense, and there's been very good information put forward by Lawyers for Choice, which I'm sure deputies have read, that avert in the legal sense means prevent. And that's a very, very definitive view in the context of risk and harm. They give a very good example in situations where an abortion would reduce the risks of health but not fully avoid them. There's a legal risk that the pregnant person could be forced to continue with the pregnancy on the ground that the need for aversion rather than reduction or considerable reduction had not been met. And they gave examples of conditions which maybe develop in line as the pregnancy goes on, where it would be safer for the person to have an early termination, but it doesn't quite tick that box. They talk about, you know, in such a case, ending a pregnancy at the earlier gestation would reduce but not eliminate the risk. Then, in other words, under the wording at present, a person who's at, say, 14 weeks gestation requires an abortion due to a condition that maybe might get worse with the pregnancy, would meet the criteria of risk to health. the pregnancy hadn't reached viability, so they ticked that box, but mightn't meet the criteria in section 10(1)(c), as the abortion would not completely avert the risk, but would only reduce, so instead would reduce it, and that's why we need to have reduced, so that somebody wouldn't have to travel to access abortion care. And that's the reason why we put forward a lot of these amendments, is that if we don't have them, there's a risk that the person who needs to access this service might have to continue to travel. The other sections 21 and 2 in this section are really just technical amendments to facilitate amendment number 15. So.